Hi everyone. Why do some dark-skinned black women praise and admire biracial women? To understand this behavior that some black women with dark skin have, we must know how the slave system, racial segregation, affected and continues to affect the mentality, personal value, sense of security, and need for acceptance in black women. No one doubts that skin color is a determining factor in the quality of life of people in a post-slavery society. And when this skin tone is associated with those who have power, perhaps that is one of the reasons why biracial mulatto women have a better chance of success than dark-skinned black women, and more when everything is the product of the racial privileges associated with skin color in America. The reality is that the lighter your skin color, the greater your chances of achieving success. The biracial mulatto woman, product of the genetic closeness with the whites and the emotional connection with the black woman, racially speaking, put the biracial woman in a position of superiority compared to the black woman. Perhaps that is why black women face this social reality. Putting a pedestal and glorifying her creates the image in the mindset of some black women that biracial women are more successful, intelligent, attractive, and desirable than black women in a society like the United States, where beauty standards are established by the white European woman. White women are considered the most beautiful, contrary to the dark-skinned black woman, who is considered the ugliest and least attractive woman. Due to their genetic proximity to white women, mulatto women are considered more beautiful and attractive than dark-skinned black women. This behavior of putting biracial mulatto women on a pedestal is nothing more than a mechanism for the projection of racial equality and individual aspirations, a product of the inferiority complex that is part of the emotional behavior of black women, in which women biracial mulattoes are in a position that all black women want to be in. In this case, we are talking about black women. There is no doubt that mulatto women present a certain phenotypic characteristic associated with the white European race, which dark-skinned black women want to have. Is the one-drop rule responsible for the inclusion of biracial mulattoes as part of the black community? From my point of view, apart from the one-drop rule, there are other reasons which, from my point of view, are the most important. Product of a false narrative imposed by white power groups, associated with the myth with the rule of a single drop of African blood. Some black women with dark skin, product of the racial connection that exists, see any success of biracial mulatto women as the success of someone they see as part of themselves. This is where the narrative of black women and biracial mulatto women are racially equal product of the imposition of the one-drop rule is partly responsible for perpetuating a narrative supported by emotional arguments and not genetic evidence that support what it is promoting. Something that we must understand as a result of the imposition of the one-drop rule. The biracial mulattoes, apart from losing their racial identity, had better luck with the imposition of the one-drop rule. But at the same time, to the detriment of dark-skinned black women, biracial mulatto women have more opportunity to have access to certain opportunities in the area of the film industry, television, politics, education, dance, theater, finance, and high executive positions that black women have little access to. And even more so when biracial mulatto women self-identify as black. All of these benefits are the product of racial privilege associated with skin tone. Many black women whose mindset is the product of this racist narrative imposed by whites do not understand that they are unable to compete with white women and biracial women, in which having access to racial privilege is a strategy to achieve wealth. Black women, product of this anti-black and pro-white narrative, which is part of the collective consciousness in many of them, do not understand that the one-drop rule does not really benefit black women as some of them think. Perhaps that is why many dark-skinned black women tend to delude themselves when they assume that if a biracially mulatto woman who self-identifies as black achieves success, she has the same opportunity to succeed because she is also black, not understanding the lie behind when you assume that lie is a truth. What are some of the identity conflicts that biracial women might face due to the imposition of the one-drop rule? When talking about biracial women, many suffer from cognitive dissonance as a result of the conflict they face between loyalty to the Black community and the loss of opportunity inflicted on it due to the enormous influence of the narrative associated with the one-drop rule, which is still part of the anti-Black mentality imposed by whites on many Black people in the United States as a result of false narrative which only harms a Black woman with dark skin. As a Black woman, it is time to break with that myth associated with the one-drop rule, which mentally chains you in a situation which you cannot escape. Unless you recognize the origin of this racial identity, which does not benefit you, on the contrary, it keeps you bottom of the social hierarchy in which whites are at the top. Black women in their need to achieve their goals can only be achieved with the elimination of the one-drop rule, because biracial mulatto women will have no more excuses to continue identifying as Black and occupy those job opportunities designated for dark-skinned Black women. Historically, everyone knows that the one-drop rule was a legal mechanism used by whites to chain Blacks together with biracial as a way of purifying the white race, but also to preserve economic power in the wealthy white elites after the 14th Amendment and the failure of the Reconstruction process. No one doubts the product of the anti-scientific implementation of racial identity imposed by whites, like the one-drop rule, as a way to protect the purity of the race, but also the economic, political, and social benefits to which Blacks and biracial mulattoes do not have access. Many Black women, when analyzing the economic, social, and emotional impact of the one-drop rule, tend to view this issue with an emotional, non-economic perspective. The one-drop rule affects the economic interests and access to opportunities that biracial mulatto women enjoy. From my point of view, no. On the contrary, the one-drop rule is something that benefits mulatto women as the deterrent of Black women with skin. Right now, biracial women are occupying the spaces that should be reserved for Black women. When you talk about the world of entertainment, education, dance, theater, acting, politics, beauty pageants, business, and more, when the phrase first Black woman is used, even when everyone can see that she is biracial mulatto woman occupying the space or position which should be intended for a Black woman. Something that Black women must recognize. As long as biracial mulatto women self-identify as Black and many dark-skinned Black women continue to accept this as a racial reality, even though they have a different complexion that tells you here Black women are still being victimized by this false narrative that whites are better than Blacks. And the implementation of the one-drop rule to biracial is just a tool used by many whites with ideas of racial superiority to achieve these objectives, to keep Black and mulatto women at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Why do dark-skinned Black women and biracial mulatto women still use the one-drop rule? Black women use it because of the emotional, family, and genetic connection it has with biracial mulatto children. Some biracial mulatto women use the one-drop rule for fear of losing the power, support, feeling of superiority, admiration of Black women, and security that the Black community offers in their need. But it is also to protect the high racial status that they have over Black women in a multiracial and multicultural society like the United States. Why is it that today, when there are no applicable laws in the US that apply the one-drop rule, are Blacks still using it? Sociologically, politically, and culturally, however, the concept of the one drop of blood continues to be used by the Black community, but also by anti-Black whites. What is the reason for the need to cling to a law that no longer legally exists? This is where the fear of the loss of political influence and loss of the power of the Black community is behind the need to continue using the rule one drop of African blood. Some African American political and community leaders justified their use, arguing that people of African descent should be united to strengthen their political position when working on legislative and civil rights activism. Pro-unity attitudes among Black descendants, which deny biracial mulattoes the right to racial self-identification, but also harm the growth and development of Black women, and all preserve a racial unity between Blacks and biracial mulattoes, which from my point of view, a myth. Something that Blacks must understand as a result of the introduction of the 14th Amendment, which constitutionally favored Afro-Americans, the white slave states of the South as a way of limiting the legal rights and freedoms of people of color, legally imposed the rule of the single drop of blood, Jim Crow rules, and segregation using the judicial and legislative power that they had in the southern states. White slaveholders imposed the one-drop rule as a mechanism to legally chain Blacks and mulattoes together as a way to limit the self-determination of Blacks and mulattoes, but also to stop their capacity for social mobilization in the fight against white supremacy. This racial unity of Blacks and mulattoes imposed by whites as a strategy to solidify white power at this time is a mental slavery chain from the past that Blacks and mulattoes must break if they really want to feel free. Right now, one-drop rule only exists as mental shackles that control Black women as a result of that narrative in which you have a drop of Black blood, you are considered Black, when everyone knows that racially there is a difference between a Black and a biracial mulatto. But for some reason, many Blacks are afraid of breaking the mental chains imposed by white slave owners. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this type of work, please subscribe to this channel and leave all your comments as a way to support this type of content.